Thank you all for joining us today in another webinar from Premier TEFL. And today's topic is all about where can TEFL take me? So I'm going to start off and I'm going to ask Luke, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the people here today a little bit about yourself? Don't give too much away because you'll be spoiling the rest of the webinar, but we'll just do a general intro and then Rachel, you go next, and then Jacob will save you for last.
Of course. Thank you, Rosie. And hi, everybody. You're very welcome. So my name is Luke, and as Rosie said, I am one of the academic assessors here at Premier TEFL, and I've been here now for just over 2 years. And my background in TEFL is mostly South America and Argentina in particular. So I worked mostly in Buenos Aires in the capital, but traveled around the country and around the continent. And thanks to TEFL, had some of the best experiences of my life. So I won't give you all the details now, but I am more than happy to share them throughout this session this evening.
Thanks, Luke. So Rachel, over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Rachel. I'm also one of the academic assessors for Premier TEFL for about 2 years now, similar to Luke. And I am mostly based in Spain. That's where I got my first TEFL job about 7 years ago now. And since then, I've worked in a few places in Europe. We'll see if we get into any of those places during the webinar. And now I mostly work online. So that takes me to some interesting places as well.
And Jacob.
Hey everyone, and yeah, very welcome. My name is Jacob Thomas. I'm the academic director at Premier TEFL, so I look after all of our courses, all our assessments. You'll see my name pop up from that every now and then, and I do recognise a few names in our group as well. So I'm very happy to see the ones of you that I've had a chat with before. Lovely to see you here with us. So my background, I've been with Premier TEFL, I think nearly just about 3 years now. Next month, I believe. And we look after all the assessments. We did level 5, 120 hours, all that type of thing. My background originally wasn't even in TEFL, and I can go into that a little bit more later. I have a degree in engineering, but I got a 120-hour degree and 120-hour qualification, and took myself off to Thailand back in 2013. And since then, I've worked in schools, worked self-employed for myself, worked online, and then branched out into assessment. So yeah, lovely to meet everybody, and looking forward to getting into it.
Great. So we do have one question in the chat box, and I think we'll just deal with that now, and then we'll move on a little bit, because I think if we talk a bit first about all the different types of jobs there are in TEFL, that can give an insight into just how many choices are out there. So Sophie is asking, she hopes that we'll touch on some of the challenges for non-native speakers to get teaching jobs in the places such as Japan and South Korea. She says she hears that it's not super easy to get those jobs. And even though, Sophie, we're all sitting here today as native English speakers doing the presentation, the guys here will have worked alongside and met a vast number of non-native English speakers on their travels and through their work history. And we at Premier TEFL have trained countless number of English teachers who English wasn't their first language. And there's a lot of people who would argue that somebody who's learning English as a second language can almost be a better teacher. That might be argued in the room, but they could be a better teacher because they've stood in the shoes of the learner and they know exactly what it's like to already go through the process of learning English. In terms of the two countries that you mentioned specifically, Japan and Korea, it's really tricky for those countries because of the visa requirement set out by the government. So it's not linked to how good a teacher you are or what your capacity is to become an excellent teacher. It's about the regulations that the government in that country set out for English teachers that are allowed to gain the work visa that's necessary. So I think we will touch on sort of non-native English teachers in general, and maybe guys, you can think of people in your past that you've worked with that maybe you have anecdotal stories over as we go through the conversation. and give a bit of reassurance to Sophie, because there are so many teachers out there where English isn't their first language, and they do excellently, and there's a lot of opportunities, but you just have to be a bit more proactive. So first of all, I suppose what I want to ask you is to think about the different types of TEFL jobs that you've had in different scenarios. So if you can think about maybe something will come to mind that is not a typical run-of-the-mill school. And one example, I'll start it off, is from one of our other assessors who isn't here today, Laura. Laura's based in Spain, and she's Irish. And one of her TEFL jobs was out in Ecuador. And at the time when she went out there, it sticks in my mind that we were actually recruiting for people to teach on oil rigs. And so, you know, cruise ships, oil rigs, there are all different types of scenarios where you might be hired to teach English. Have you guys any stories or any contracts that you have fulfilled where you weren't in a typical location?
I haven't had it, but I've seen some really interesting jobs. Two that stick to mind are, there was a recurring job a few years ago to train one of the Korean like top league football teams, which was quite an interesting job. And it wasn't very many, I think it was 2 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week, but it had a full month's salary. I thought that was really interesting. And when I first started on TEFL.com, there was actually a job advertisement for a short 2 or 3 month contract to train a various department in the North Korean government, which I think extremely, you know, I've never seen it pop up before or since, but you can go to some wild places, that's for sure.
I was once offered a contract for the Kazakhstan government to work with local teachers it was a government job online, and unfortunately I didn't do it just because the timing didn't work out for me. But I, like Jacob, there's a lot of adverts to train, you know, people on military bases, oil rigs, like Rosie said. You can find some really interesting adverts up there.
And would you say TEFL.com is one of the best sources for those jobs?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's the most comprehensive. It covers, if there's a country posting a job advert, then it's on TEFL.com. It's really easy to look. If you want to find a specific country, you can narrow it down. If you want to look online as opposed to in classroom, it's one that I use a lot.
Great. And another one that just came to mind of an interesting job was when the Olympics were in Brazil. It was either the Olympics or could have been a World Cup, actually, could be mixed up there. But I saw a job posting that was looking for English teachers to teach the taxi drivers English. So the government was putting some funding there so that, because of the volume, the sheer volume of people who would be traveling to Brazil for that sports event, they knew that they needed, that was a sort of a weak area, was the taxi drivers. And it goes across a broad spectrum that, you know, people in the leisure and tourism industry, restaurants, hotels, you know, that's more typical that we know they'd need to have English. But I thought it was a good one that taxi drivers were being sort of essentially sponsored by the government to learn English. We've got a couple of questions in the chat box there. So I'm looking at summer camps. Where can I look for summer camps? So Rachel, you might be able to take that question, could you?
Yeah, so I've done quite a few summer camps just because of the way the academic year works in Spain. It gave me some summers free, and I love traveling, so I decided to kind of combine the travel and the TEFL work. So I've done summer camps in Switzerland, Greece, Italy, some summer schools in the UK, Romania, I did for a few years. So there are lots of summer camps all over Europe, and most of them you'll find on TEFL.com for the adverts.
There's a section actually on the website, it's usually down the bottom, from January to Easter each year. That's where the huge drive is for summer camps. And in a normal year after Easter, all the summer camp positions are usually filled. So I think if you're looking for summer camp jobs, now is definitely the hot time to apply.
I've literally seen some today. It's popped up, one in the Czech Republic, one in Poland. Like, they're just starting to recruit now. So it's a really good time to start looking and focusing where you want to go for summer.
Yeah, we do have 2 programs that we work with ourselves, one in Germany and one in Romania. And
Which I did.
yeah, and it's nearly full. It gets full so quickly. But I think if you enjoy the outdoors and you really want to see like the culture of a country, and you're happy to sort of be an energetic English teacher for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, I think that that is an awesome way to spend your summer. It really is. So yeah, it's near the Romanian one. I think we have 3 positions left for the summer, and then Germany has a new location as well added to their different camps, so that has quite a few placements left. Just depends on whether you fit the requirements, because a lot of the European summer camps will also look for people with an EU passport, so that they don't have to worry about work visas and things like that. But there are summer camps worldwide, and even online summer camps too. Was it summertime that you went to Argentina, Luke?
Yes, it was. I actually did a couple of summer camps as well. And I think they are great for people who are new to TEFL, maybe like some of you guys who are a bit anxious about starting in the classroom. It's a good way to throw yourself in there and just have fun with it, really. But it was mostly summer, and you need to have a lot of energy for them. They can be quite demanding energy-wise, but they are a great opportunity, and they are a lot of fun too.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I think short, they're short duration, so you can sort of get yourself in the right frame of mind for it. And know that these are not typical 9-to-5 jobs. The summer camp is sort of, I mean, apart from when you're sleeping, you're kind of involved in camp activities. So it is, it's a great immersion into the world of teaching English. We had another question there from Carla about whether the Chinese market is open again. I can speak a little bit about that because I did a webinar with Giraffe Inspire a few weeks ago, and you'll find that on YouTube, Carla, as well, if you want to have a look at it. They're currently recruiting for positions in Shanghai. The Chinese market is open again for foreign teachers, but where the restriction comes in is that, or the main restriction is that there's a limit on the amount of invitation letters that they can give out for foreign teachers to come to China. So it's a different landscape than what it was 2 years ago. And larger companies like EF and Wall Street English certainly are restricted on the amount of job offers that they can make compared to what it was like a few years ago. But the Chinese market is definitely open for foreign teachers to go there. And great opportunities too. If you fit the requirements, the salaries are really they're really generous at the minute. Okay, lots of questions here, so I'm going to fly through some of these. Okay, are there programs that offer ESL teacher training and placement? Yes, there are. You can find about 15 of those on the Premier TEFL website. They're under the internship tab, and that would combine 120 hours of online teacher training, and then usually a single semester placement, either summer camps or single semester, which is about 4 to 6 months long, depending on the country. And some news on that, actually, today we had a meeting with our partners in Myanmar, and for the first time in 2 years, it now is looking very likely that we'll be able to take applicants who would like to go back to Myanmar. It's a really, I suppose, an untouched part of the world, really. It didn't allow teachers, it didn't allow anybody in through their borders for a very long time. And we sort of started to see teachers going out there in 2019, and Sandra tells me in the office that there's still one person there. And Myanmar is an interesting one. Like Sri Lanka was many years ago, there is civil unrest in that country, and so some people may be very interested to go there but unsure about the safety. on the whole, generally speaking, it's actually a very safe country, and only teachers will only be placed in Yangon and one other location. And there are some controls in place after the military coup that was there, but we wouldn't be allowing teachers to go back if we weren't really happy and satisfied that the safety was going to be there for them. Okay, sorry, Carla was talking about teaching online for China. Does anyone else want to take that? Because I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation, or I can do it if you prefer.
As far as I know, there's limited opportunities. It got completely shut down, and then it's sort of being opened up in various small ways. I'd say as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not anything like it was, but there are still opportunities there. So for example, the blanket ban generally applies to young learners. So you can still teach adults, and there's still companies that do teach adults, but it has taken a huge hit. But there are some limited companies that you still have availability for. And then there's other places such as learners from Hong Kong, learners from Taiwan, learners from Singapore, you know, or some other regions outside mainland China in Asia that are really popular with online that are still going. So I'd say it's not completely shut down. It's just not kind of the go-to that it was before, but I can only imagine it will slowly come back as time goes by.
Yeah, it's true. The rule was, when the blanket ban came in, the rule was that if that company had already sold lessons, they could continue to deliver them. So if you had a learner who had bought 12 months in advance, then that company could and was entitled to fulfill that contract. I think that some companies are trying to sort of circumvent the policy in a way, because the idea was it was deduplication of mainstream education. So it wasn't just English, it was any topic that was taught during school, that they were trying to stop it having duplicated education then in the morning or the evening. So yeah, I think Jacob hit on a good point that it's more aimed at school age people, and so if you're talking about teaching adults or late teens, then there's more opportunity there. And I think that what will probably happen is that it will be in some way regulated by the Chinese government, and that's probably what's going to underpin the landscape of it in the future. Some of you may know very kind of common popular brands like iTutor Group, and it also had Tutor ABC, which was part of that family of brands. And now Tutor ABC has been separated off, and they are now focusing more on the Taiwanese market. So there's a lot of English learners in that area. And I think that companies are going to become, they're either going to go global, or so they're still going to be Chinese owned but go global, or what they may do is they may try and make their lessons more about drama and more creative arts, and have English through that, and that would be a way to also circumvent the policy. Okay, Lavonda, you were asking about online training being preferable. Yes, the majority of our internships actually are, you do your TEFL training online before you would then travel. Okay, we don't have any opportunities in Africa right now, so we don't have in-classroom opportunities, but I think there would be a great appetite for that if we were able to find some good partners. Okay, Peter, Peter's question, when job postings say CELTA or CELTA equivalent is required, is that a hard requirement or a soft requirement? And would most teaching placement personnel regard level 5 off-qual credentials as really being equivalent to CELTA? So there's a bit in that. Jacob, you might want to take some of that, and we can get the opinions from the rest of the guys too. So there's a few parts in that question. First is, if you see a job advert where it says CELTA or CELTA equivalent required, would you go on ahead and apply even if you didn't have that exact qualification? And the second part of the question is, do employers see the off-qual level 5 as a true CELTA equivalent?
Yeah, cheers. So I think, you know, anything that says CELTA or CELTA equivalent, if you have a level 5 or something similar, then absolutely go for it. So what they're looking for is two things. They're looking for that level 5 qualification, because the CELTA is a level 5 qualification. It's just delivered in a slightly different way than a purely online course, because it has the teaching element. And that's the other part they're looking for, is that, you know, CELTA has the 6 hours observed teaching practice. So they're looking for you to have the knowledge and to have some practical experience. However, there's a lot of jobs, a lot of schools, and, you know, I know whenever, you know, there's minimum requirements, and then there's other people that can meet different kinds of, you know, if you have experience in something else, if you have experience teaching a different topic, but it's not, you know, you have the level 5 without the teaching practice, etc., etc. There's lots of different pathways you can get to that. I always say go for it. Everybody's generally done some kind of teaching of something that you can express on a CV and or a cover letter to show that you can teach something. You know, when I started, I only had a 120, and I wore my suit walking around Thailand with my CV in my hand, because you know, in 2013 there wasn't sort of, you know, huge job websites and that were so reliable as today. So, you know, I explained that I taught engineering to my colleagues. I taught somebody that I knew's sister. I taught them GCSE science informally. So everybody's usually done something that you can put as your experience. So I always say just go for it. Usually something like having a certificate. If it's a visa requirement, that's a hard requirement. You can't talk the visa office round going, but I taught my little sister. It doesn't work like that. But you can, you know, if you're explaining to a school, if you're the right person, if you're an approachable person, a kind person, an open person who's got some experience and a reasonable qualification, you know, you're going to be in with a really good shot, basically. So I say definitely go for it. Level 5 is level 5, whether it's CELTA, whether it's an online level 5. The teaching practice is the difference. And if you're even concerned in any way about the teaching practice, we offer teaching practice. So go and have a look on our website. There's Observed and there's just general teaching practice. So have a look, and that's a really, really good way of upping those hours when you're looking for to go for a job through any kind of qualification. So yes, absolutely. Don't let it put you off. And when you look on places like TEFL.com or job forums, don't let it put you off if it says things like must have 2 years experience. They just put that. That just means not 0. Okay, so nobody's looking at the clock going, you know, well, I've had 1 year and 11 months, so next month I'll apply. Go and just have a go. You have no harm but to have a go. And, you know, I've done a lot of recruitment for us for Premier TEFL, and I tell you what, a piece of advice is doing a good, accurate cover letter gets you like 95% of the way. Like if you just address in brief the points of the job and why you're good for it and why you want it, that's going to get you so far through the door, even potentially further than experience. Because if you just say, all the recruiter wants to know is, are you capable? Can you do it? And, you know, do you even understand the task? So if you write in about how you can't wait to go and live in, you know, China, but actually it's an online job and you're not going to be living in China, the first thing they're going to go is, well, you haven't read the jobs next. So just writing a good, short, concise cover letter that meets the requirements is really, really useful. You know, you can have a standard one, but make sure to tailor it a little bit. Whenever I've applied to jobs in the past, I always go and look at the school online. I try and find the name of a manager sitting somewhere in a meet the team kind of situation. And then, you know, dear Jacob, dear Rosie, dear Luke, you know, and that just that shows you've gone the extra little step there. So all these things matter together just as much as having a qualification or having the relevant experience. They all kind of build up into one.
And Rachel, look, have you applied for jobs in the past where you didn't meet all of the requirements?
Yeah, definitely. Again, some jobs they tend to exaggerate. You need 5 years of experience, and there were times where I didn't have 5 years of experience. Maybe I had a few years. But like Jacob said, if you really sell yourself on your cover letter, you sell the skills that you do have, the things that you've done, then, you know, if you have a really good application, then they're going to consider you, because, you know, 5 is just a number, and it might not necessarily mean that that person is better for the job than you are. You just need to make sure that you put the effort into your application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nearly like a perfect day scenario. The recruitment person is saying this would be you know, my ideal candidate, but I think a lot of times it can be unrealistic, and the best candidate might not be a perfect match for that.
I don't think I've ever fully met the requirements for any job I've ever applied for. Being honest, I really think Jacob is right when he says you have to sell yourself, and people really undersell themselves when they apply for jobs, and they write themselves off because they don't 100% meet the job requirements. And I think it's an interesting point, the one with CELTA and level 5 equivalent, but I think it is important to remember that CELTA is a level 5 qualification. So technically they are the same in terms of level of qualification. So just to bear that in mind. And then just make sure that you meet the requirements of the job, that you tailor your application to the job requirements, and you are definitely in with a chance. So I think it's premature to write yourself off because you don't have a CELTA or you don't have the exact amount of experience or whatever reason. Go for it if you're really interested in it, and you never know where it might take you.
Yeah, it's a fact. And my little sort of last piece of advice on that topic is people in schools all around the world are getting CVs daily. And they're getting ones that are, and the guys have touched on it, they're not customized and they're not tailored to the exact job description. And so somebody might sit down, because it's quite a fickle world, the world of TEFL. You know, teachers will leave if they get a better salary somewhere else. And so there's a lot of movement in this industry, a lot of movement compared to other industries. And so if you imagine either the director of studies or whoever is in charge of recruitment at the school, they will be getting maybe 10 to 20 resumes daily for a job, and half of them are just copy and paste templates. We see it too. So what I would say is just take the extra 30 minutes, customize your cover letter, customize your CV a bit for the job in hand, and then take a note of the job that you've applied for. Because again, I've had the experience personally where I would ring somebody to say that we're interested to talk to you about the job application. And they're saying, sorry, what's your company? Sorry, what was that job again? So I would just say, take a note, have it, have a spreadsheet if you need to, of the jobs that you've applied to that you really want, because otherwise it can be quite embarrassing if you get the phone call and they are considering you and you don't remember who they are.
Just following on from that point, what I always do is take a screenshot of the duties and requirements of a job, because it's very often, if you apply, for example, on TEFL.com, the job goes. So by the time you get to the interview, you might not be able to go back and check what they're looking for. So you can't really prepare your interview as well to sell yourself for that specific job. So I always just take a little photo or a screenshot, and then I go back to it, and then I can prepare for the interview a lot better than if I'm just like, oh, it's a teaching job, but exactly what are they asking from you? Brilliant
tip. That's brilliant. Okay, there's loads of questions here. So even though we had our own agenda of what we were going to chat about, sometimes I love this where actually, the audience decides what we discuss. We've got a question here. I'm interested in teaching in Spain. Could you rate from least to highest preference for who gets hired? Is it a temporary resident, a permanent resident, an EU citizen? And also, do I need to have a CELTA to teach in Spain, or is a TEFL course sufficient? I have a bachelor's in education. So Rachel, since you're in Spain and you have a lot of experience there, maybe that's one for you, whether you have experience or not. So is there an order of preference of who gets hired, whether they're an EU national, permanent or temporary resident?
So at the moment, the climate in Spain is asking for people who have a legal right to work in Spain. So on that decision, it doesn't really matter if you're an EU citizen or if you're already a permanent resident, you both have the legal right to work here. So there wouldn't be any preference because the paperwork on the part of the company is kind of the same. If you don't have the legal right to work in Spain, then that would be you'd have to look for a company that's willing to do the paperwork. It does happen. I've worked with many American teachers, Australian teachers, where the paperwork process is more complicated than, you know, somebody, you know, coming from the UK pre-Brexit or coming from an EU country. So you can find schools that are willing to do that. But some schools will now say that you need the legal right to work in Spain. And if you have any of those, if you fit any of the criteria for that, then it's all the same to the company. It's the same kind of process, that you have the right to work here, so they can give you a contract. Just about the requirements, you don't need a CELTA. You can have a TEFL, you can have a 120-hour, 180-hour course to work here. If you've got a bachelor's degree, then that's great as well. It's not always necessary, but if you have it, then it's just something else that you can put on your CV to kind of bump you up. But yeah, a TEFL certificate is fine. You don't need a CELTA for academies here.
Great, thank you. And then there's a question from Thara saying, actually now businesses, this is not for Spain now, but just in general, businesses are now asking for a Delta, but that is something a little bit different. So one of you guys want to take that just to explain the difference, and again, feeding into the pathway of what is a Delta, why would somebody do a Delta, and what kind of job would you be getting if you were Delta qualified?
Yeah, I can take that if you like. So hi Thara, firstly, I know you, so thanks for coming. Delta, yeah, the Delta level jobs are different level. That, you know, you look to do a Delta if you're very serious. You know, when you get into it and you're doing your 120 or your 180 hour, generally it's either to test the water or to go and have a try at something, or to have a dabbling online and, you know, get that experience, learn, you know, do some online teaching, go travel and teach, do your Argentina teaching, do your Spain teaching, do your Thailand teaching, in my case Germany, etc. And then when you get a few years down the line and you've had a lot of experience in different settings, not just one type of, you know, general English classroom teaching, you need a wide variety of experience. They generally recommend at least 1,000 hours classroom teaching. Then you would, you know, if you were really serious about your English career as a lifelong career, you'd look at a qualification such as a Delta, such as a DIP TESL, which is the equivalent, or a master's. For example, Luke's just finished his master's in education, I believe. Rachel and I have Deltas, and Rachel's currently starting a master's. So, you know, these are they're level 7, they're very high qualifications. They get you exactly the type of job that we have here, which is you are able to assess or administer examinations, assessments. They allow you to not be a teacher in a school. They allow you to be a manager, an academic manager, a director, an academic director, some kind of higher management job. A Delta would allow you to be a course writer. So you could be a part of the team for Oxford or Cambridge, for example, writing the course books and editing them. So, you know, there's lots of different pathways that they afford. And I think it's a really good option. It's something that I did. I was teaching for 4 years before I took my Delta, which was a reasonable amount of time. Most people that I met had been doing it for 5 to 10 years. So any kind of Delta level job, if a job says it needs a Delta, it's one of two things. They are either extremely optimistic, as Rachel was mentioning, that they're going to get 100 Delta teachers, or there's a level, there's just a minimum level that they expect, such as a university teaching post. You know, if you're expected to go to Bahrain or go to Japan and teach in a university at a high level, then maybe they're going to ask you for some kind of Delta level. I was offered a job a while back teaching English at a university in London. That's a Delta level job. So these are not your typical ones you'd have online. However, you know, you can go out and get all the normal jobs in normal schools, and your pay is a notch above, and you're generally going to be kind of first in line for any kind of promotion or management, or kind of you end up doing a lot of things like observations or you know, teacher training, that sort of thing. So that really opens up. And I think for any serious teacher down the line, that should be your goal: Delta, Masters, DIP TESL, something to extend your qualification. Obviously what we offer is the 120 and the level 5, and they're perfect for everybody starting out, kind of the beginning and the middle of your career. And when you get back, you know, like I did, I finished my main travels, with my partner, we started our family, we settled down in my home country, and I said, right, what next? Well, let's go and get a Delta. Let's really make this a lifelong career rather than, something I tried in my 20s. And that's generally how people attack it. And that's why it's very, very useful. It should definitely be a goal down the line. And
it's probably fair to say that in terms of career progression, and again, this is why we're here today, is to show all the different pathways that you can have in TEFL. That if you do essentially a course that is suitable for beginners, so either the 120 or a level 5, and you can do your specialist courses to give you more skills in exam teaching or business English or something like that. But if you don't continue your learning and your qualifications in the field, then just because you teach for 5 years or for 10 years won't naturally mean that you're going to earn a higher pay grade. And so this is, I suppose this is something that it's good for people to know, is that in other jobs, if you do that job long enough, you'll be seen as an expert, and then you can maybe get a higher pay bracket. In TEFL, if you want to definitely secure a more comfortable career, a better salary, then you should look to progress up through the different qualifications that you can have. And with that, then you can either stay as a specialist English teacher in either a university or a very, very highly regarded position, or you can then go into the teacher training, the observation, and go into the nearly like behind the scenes, really, which is where all you guys are, is you're in behind the scenes helping other people now embark on this career.
If I could just say one thing on that note, if that's okay. I think it's also important to caution against jumping in too early to things like Delta as well. And I think it's more important at this stage, if you've just taken your level 5, to amass that experience and really get a feel for what it's like to teach, because some people are so hung up on getting the qualifications. I want to be the best and I want this now. But Delta does call for quite a lot of experience, and I think use your level 5 TEFL qualification, get out there and see what you can do with it, and build up some experience, some life stories in TEFL before you actually jump into a program like Delta. I just found that in my experience that helped a lot more, and it's something I think that's important to keep in mind as well when considering a course like a Delta. Should I do it? Am I ready to do it? Do I think I actually have enough teaching experience to do this? Am I a good enough teacher at the moment to do this? So just the other side of the coin as well, I would like to give some attention to.
Definitely. And so look, stay with me then. There's a question here. Now, I'm also conscious that we've 20 more questions in this chat box, so I'm going to put you all on like a 30-second quick fire round very soon to get through some of these. Lavanda's wondering, how many hours training would you say allows you to be well equipped? And I think, from a very basic standpoint, what's the minimum standard? Look.
Well, for Delta, Jacob said 1,000 hours. I think 2 years full-time teaching experience is the minimum requirement. But I would be looking at going a bit above the minimum requirement. And obviously it depends on person to person, how diverse your experience is. If you've been working in the same school for those 2 years, then perhaps you're not as experienced in ways as somebody who has kind of dipped in a variety of settings. So I don't think the minimum is what you should be working with. Always try and get a bit more and gauge yourself if you think you're ready for a program like that.
Great. Now, I think her question was actually more around just even starting off. What's the minimum you need to get started in TEFL? But that's a good tip to always go above and beyond before you move on to the next level. So just in terms of, if Lavanda is completely brand new to TEFL, talk to her about her the options. What's her options for the minimum that she'd need to get started?
Well, in terms of the qualification, it's the 120 hour is the most basic minimum qualification to get. I know a lot of places that don't need any experience whatsoever in terms of starting a job. It's just get your basic TEFL qualification and take it from there. I don't like to talk about it in terms of rigid hours, because I think the first step is to get your level 5 or 120-hour TEFL and then find a job and start building up experience. That's the pathway that I would recommend.
Yeah, great. Scott says that he is taking a gap year and he got his level 5 qualification. Good man, Scott. And if he went into teaching after his degree, is it likely that he would need to do a refresher course?
Do you want me to take that one? No, unless he wants to, because his qualification will be valid for life. If you feel rusty, go for it, but you won't need to. Usually, like if you've done a very, very, very old qualification that doesn't quite meet the intended hours, then you might have to do a refresher course or a top-up course. But if you got a level 5, it's good now, it's good in 5 years. You know, my 120 is still good from 2013.
Yeah.
Not that I need now. Yeah, you'll be fine.
It's a lifelong qualification, which is great. Rita is saying, if you're in the USA, would the Delta apply?
It would be fine. Obviously, the landscape of teaching English is slightly different there, because there's fewer language schools in that there are, like in the UK and in Asia, in South America. But yes, Delta does apply. They do like their master's and their bachelor's degrees over there as well. And it's certainly, the ESL is certainly taking off big time in the States as well. So they're really, really getting into it. But yes, it does. They do recognize it, they do know it. But Delta means it's from Cambridge University. So it's a British qualification. So it's very, very, I mean, it's worldwide recognized. But an American person may typically do an online, like a level 5, and then go into a master's. However, lots of people do Deltas and Celtas as well.
Rachel, Abba says, do I need teaching experience to teach in Spain? If so, how many years?
So as a rule, you don't need any teaching experience. It all depends on the school you apply for. So some schools are happy to take teachers with no experience, and some schools might say, yes, you might need 2 years of experience. It's just like what we said before, it's all about selling yourself. So there's no kind of hard rule, yes, you must have this experience. It depends on the school that you apply for.
Okay, super. And somebody else was just asking, how would you go about getting a job in Spain? So I think, Carla, maybe you can tell us what's your background in terms of your home country, and that might help us shape the answer to that question. There's a lot of love for you guys in the chat box there, just to let you know, lots of people are very appreciative of the answers to all of your questions. So Carla, yeah, let us know where you're from and we'll be able to give you more specific advice on that. Anybody, actually, another webinar I did very recently was for teaching in Spain. So if anybody has graduated from university in the last 4 years, then Medeas are looking for language assistants to start from September. They're looking for 350. And also they'll take people who speak French and German also. Okay, Darren says, what type of job would you recommend I could do after getting my TEFL certificate? No experience in teaching at all.
I can have a suggestion for this one. So obviously think about what type of job you would like and where you'd like to go, and then start looking at job adverts. You know, what are the requirements? Like I said, in Spain, it's very often that if you don't have any years of experience, that they could still take you on, because they might be quite keen to take you and train you themselves, so they can kind of mold you into the teacher that they would like you to be in their school. So, you know, it doesn't mean that you can't get a job. It depends where you want to go and the requirements of the school. I think also it's kind of good to point out that everything now is online, lots of jobs online, and in particular there are a lot of volunteering jobs, teaching migrants, refugees, asylum seekers. So if you're kind of looking to get a bit of experience and maybe, you know, want a bit of confidence before you go for like your main teaching job in September, it's worth looking at some organizations that you can do some voluntary teaching, because they will happily take new teachers. And it doesn't mean that you need to do a full-time job with them. You could just teach for an hour or two every week, get you some experience, get some online experience, and then it's something else that goes on the CV. So at the moment, I think it's a really good way for brand new teachers to get experience. And like I said, there's a lot of organizations out there that are wanting online teachers for migrants and refugees.
Okay, great, super. I'm going to take a couple more questions in this chat box, and then there's a few questions that I want to ask you guys, and then we are going to be rounding off this this webinar for today. So Carla is British and Italian with a CELTA and is 44 years young. So Carla, there's lots of opportunities there for you. I would say quite an easy slide into teaching in Spain. So probably look at some of the, either Google some of the academies in the area that you would like to go to. So look at the map of Spain, pick where you'd like to go, start then searching for academies in that area with the town or the city, and make absolute personal contact, as well as looking at the jobs that are listed on ESL Cafe, TEFL.com. And then, Rachel, what do you recommend for a person who's more than 20 years of teaching experience? She wants to teach in the UAE.
Well, yeah, there are lots of jobs in the UAE. You know, they've got really good packages. They often include accommodation, flights, tax-free salaries. And I think if you have the qualifications and the experience, then you'd be a really good candidate. Again, TEFL.com, there's a lot of opportunities in the UAE and the surrounding areas, and you can get some really attractive offers.
Yeah, and I think one thing is a little bit tighter there now than it was in previous years. And so usually schools are looking for a degree in either education, in early childhood studies, or something, a degree that is related to education in some way. So that's something just to watch out for. Okay. Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, so guys, I'm just conscious that we are almost the 60-minute mark, okay, and that we'll be rounding off this webinar because nobody will watch back a 60-minute recording. I know that. So what I wanted to ask you was to think about maybe a couple of between 1 and 3 highlights from your own TEFL career. Maybe from different destinations around the world, different scenarios that you've either found yourself in, or memories that you think, gosh, wasn't I lucky to be here, you know, and it's all to do with being able to teach English as a foreign language. So look, what about yourself? Have you a handful of memories that you can share, experiences that you've had in your life that you just wouldn't have done or wouldn't have gotten if you weren't in TEFL?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when I first went into TEFL, I was very young and I threw myself into it, went out to Argentina. I think I was 18 when I first went out. And I think the thing that struck me the most when I first went out there was how people looked at me and they realized I wasn't from there and I didn't sound like I was from there, and they embraced me so warmly. And just the people that I met, living with host families, meeting other expats and teachers out there, meeting locals out there. I think it really is a people job, and you really do form some friendships that last with you. So that would be the main thing that I would say. Traveling as well, South America is just gorgeous, and anybody who hasn't been out there, I would highly recommend it. It's cheap, a lot of opportunities, especially after COVID. We could all do with a bit of travel now. So from that perspective as well, I would highly recommend it. But all I can say about TEFL, and I'm conscious of the time, is that you will see the world and you will have some amazing experiences with it.
Brilliant. And the program that you did in Argentina is on our website under the internship tab. It's on premiertefl.com. It's just had some changes. So we had a meeting earlier on this week with the partners out there, They have now removed the requirement that you needed a degree to take part, because that had been there for the past few years. And they've also broadened the scope of the age range, which means that it will now be eligible for people from the age of 18 to 45. So I think you should take Luke's advice. I think you should go to South America, and Argentina you can go for from about 3 months, and very flexible start dates. So if anybody's interested in that, take a little look there. Rachel, you did something pretty epic this year. You reached a milestone, didn't you? I wonder if you're happy to share that. What did you manage to do this year?
Yeah, so travel is like my #1 passion in life, and I always wanted to visit 30 countries before my 30th birthday, and I managed it just 2 weeks ago. I just turned 30, and I finally went to Georgia, which was my dream destination. I had to cancel a few years ago because of COVID, and I finally got to my 30th country. Because of TEFL and because of my assessing online and teaching online, I can go and just go to a different place, take the laptop and just continue traveling. Like in November, I spent 7 weeks in Serbia, Macedonia, Kosovo. And while I was doing that, I thought that's not something I could do if I wasn't in TEFL and didn't have that freedom to move around. And just one more quick memory, my favorite kind of TEFL memory was when I was working in a summer camp in Switzerland. And every day my walk home was walking past Lake Geneva and seeing Mont Blanc opposite. And that was my walk home twice a day to go to school and go back. And every single day in the Swiss summer, looking at Mont Blanc, I thought, I'm so grateful to be in TEFL and to just be able to see that view twice or as many times I wanted a day. And that's something that's just always stuck with me.
Wow. Wow. How are you going to top that one, Jacob?
I'll talk all about the courses now. I'm joking. Mine, I've been sort of, at my desk for a number of years now, but I will always be a huge champion of Thailand. That's where I cut my teeth, and I loved it. I loved how random it was. I loved how different it was. I loved the food and the people and the students, and how, like Luke said about Argentina, how grateful and happy they were. Just like Spain in Europe is a great starting place, Thailand in Asia is a fantastic starting. And I'll be honest, if my partner didn't make me come home, I would still be there, because it's
we'll cut that out of the recording.
I'm a big champion Thailand. I think it's fantastic. Everywhere, everyone's got that place which is their kind of paradise, and that's my paradise. But swings and roundabouts. On the other side, TEFL's given me a wonderful career. When I came back, I worked for myself, self-employed, because there were no schools nearby, and then built my business at home where people would study and taught online, and that's led to assessments and examinations and courses and things like that. So you can shape it exactly how you want. So if you want to go and be in a school, you can go and be in a school. If you want to go and travel everywhere like Rachel and just take your laptop, you can. If you want to sit down and have even almost a corporate style career, you can also do that. You can do it anything, everything that you want to do, basically. Yeah. And I do take my laptop when I go away as well.
Yeah, and you're sparking memories for me here as well. Some years ago we used to work with a B Corp, so it's essentially a company that is recognized as giving back to their environment. A B Corp company in it's just escaped me now. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But in Chile, that's where it was, in Chile. And it was a corporate style job with what they had. So you would be employed to go around to the likes of Groupon and some other huge multinationals in Santiago, and you would be employed to go and teach English to those business people. And I remember, Jacob, we haven't even touched on the fact that you would have hosted English learners in your home also, and that you've clocked up over 5,000 hours of online teaching. We could probably sit here and talk to you guys for hours about the different experiences and the different jobs and the different pathways of TEFL, but we are pretty much bang out of time today. There's 2 last questions in the box. I'll just have a quick look there. Okay, thanks, Jacob. Just posted a link there for and Emma, looking for the best TEFL course online. So we have a brand new 180-hour level 5 TEFL course, and that is extremely popular right now. You compare it with some specialist courses, and you compare it with some teaching practice, anything to suit your own budget and what you feel you need. We also have a course picker tool on the website that's very popular. You put in your own goals and your current experience, and it will tell you, based on the information, what would be the best recommendation from us. Which online companies allow you to travel and teach abroad? Well, any of them, Abba, because it doesn't really matter where you are, so long as you have the correct operating system on your laptop, the correct speed internet. What else would you need, Rachel? What are the requirements for teaching online nowadays?
What you just said, good laptop, good internet, good microphone, headphones. You might want to consider time zones, things like that. If you travel, you need to make sure you follow the time zones and it works for you. But it's really simple. You pick up the laptop, make sure you've got the camera and the microphone in the bag, and then you go and you can do it.
Yeah, and which countries in South America have good internet to be able to do this? Did you ever have any issues in South America with internet speed, Luke?
That depends on how rural you go. If you stay in the cities, capital cities in particular, you'll be absolutely fine. But if you start venturing out, you might come into some issues there. So just to keep that in mind, but I never really had an issue with internet.
Okay, great. And Rachel, where would you get the jobs for the voluntary teaching for refugees? Have you seen them online, or where were you picking those up?
Yeah, I've seen them and I've done them myself as well. There are a lot on TEFL.com. I feel like we've really pushed that website today, but it really is one of the best TEFL job websites you can find. So there's a lot on there. And you also find a lot on Facebook. So if you join any sort of TEFL groups or TEFL groups in the UK, TEFL groups in Spain, people always post these type of adverts, especially with the current climate. There are a lot of migrants, refugees right now in Europe. So just check out some Facebook groups and then TEFL.com.
Exactly. And our own job site, GoCambio, also has 2 Facebook groups with sort of 5,000 or 6,000 people in each of those. So GoCambio.com is the job site that we have ourselves under Premier TEFL, and then those 2 Facebook groups. Now there are 1 million Facebook groups that are all, and I'm part of a ton of the groups. So, I think never put all your eggs in one basket. Join as many of those as you can, and you will start to see then different trends coming through. So with a diploma rather than an associate's diploma, where can I teach abroad? Technically, for teaching abroad with that, you'd be looking at any country that did not require a degree. So some countries will require to be an English teacher in that country. To get the correct work visa and permit, you must have a degree. So, for example, Thailand, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, those countries, they won't accept people who are applying that don't have a degree qualification. But other countries, you could have Cambodia, for example, is a popular one in Asia that doesn't require a degree. And all across South America and Europe. So look, guys, I want to thank everybody who has joined us this evening for this webinar. It has been so interactive. You guys have been a fantastic audience. I really want to thank my guests today, Luke, Rachel and Jacob, for joining me, for sharing your personal stories, for sharing your insights into your career and your experiences in the world of TEFL. I think we should do one of these again in another few months, because there's so many questions out there for you guys, and you're just a wealth of information. So thank you again. There's a lot of love in that chat box. It's going mental right now. It's been fantastic. Thank you to everybody who's joined us this evening. Thank you very much.